Last time we left off, I teased you with a certain structure. We'll get to it soon, don't worry. We start off by sending one of our quest prisoners away, who thankfully was unharmed during the betrayal raid from before. Soon after, we're visited by a rather special guest, the faction leader of our greatest allies. Surely nothing ominous will happen to him. Well, don't worry. This time it isn't any sort of foreshadowing. He just has a pleasant stay. What's actually interesting is that our relations with other factions have improved alongside our service. Gomorrah is putting in work, and thanks to it we get 2 new colonists from it. Although we'll slightly anger our allies by recruiting them this way, our relations are safely in the green. But we can't rest on our laurels. We have 2 casinos left to build. This time we're going for the tops. And with Gomorrah functional, the Lucky 38 is undergoing renovations to make it the technological powerhouse it is supposed to be. The lab has more space now that we have a dedicated comms room, the fridge is now the spot for our wondrous new machine, and Mr. House has a far more luxurious room for himself. On the side, we've started deep drilling in order to lessen the shortages on some materials like plasteel and steel itself. Far as our toxic waste problem, well, it is still the cannibal tribe's problem, actually. We've also got some animals joining us, briefly. They'll stock up the kitchen quite nicely. The actual big issue is every now and then we're hit with a short-circuit event like this. While nothing really bad has happened yet, it's only a matter of time. So the plan here is to start upgrading the grid so we don't have to rely on solar or wind power as much. Later on, we can be rid of batteries entirely. That aside, raids have increased in frequency and keep being very inconvenient, mostly due to having to drag House along and having such a limited command range on his Securitrons. It has been nothing short of luck that House hasn't been targeted yet and hasn't received a serious injury, so we'll need to fix this, and fast. We need the Gestalt engine. While everything else has been going on, we've been accumulating cash. Even though we get some decent income from our casinos and hotels, it isn't enough to cover some expenses. So we've been selling weapons and other items we get from raiders, trading with every visiting trader, then sending most of our silver to the bank, leaving only small amounts for direct trade. And more importantly, investing all our savings on the stock market. Trading Expanded has not only banking but stock trading, and now the time has come to collect our profits selling off some of that stock. All of our efforts pay off as we get to put out a very expensive contract to have a Persona Core sent to us, the last piece of the puzzle needed for the Gestalt engine. We can finally begin the work. Here it is in all its glory. The obvious advantage is that it gives extra bandwidth by effectively acting as a second Mechanitor. But the less obvious one is this, unlimited command range. No longer House will have to go to the front lines with his Securitrons. Everything is automated. On the note of the strip's defenses, I've been testing out some non-lethal weapons. Not that it particularly matters now, but at some point I'll need more live prisoners for the rip scanner, and at the moment it serves as a decent support for the firepower we already have. It just needs better protection. Of course, running all that means we need to start expanding the power grid now. The Gestalt engine will need upgrades for larger bandwidth, which will also drain more energy from the grid. With a few more sandbags, we can turn the gap in the strip's wall into a modestly fortified position. I won't make any permanent emplacements there, as in the future we'll have the Ultralux built in this area. But I can at the very least build an artilleron to provide mobile mortar support for the time being. Now checking in on our colonists, love is in the air. Well, for the most part. Gumpy proposes to Frog, and they have their marriage ceremony at Gomorrah. Riley falls in love with one of the new colonists, and soon enough she proposes to him. A quest comes up with a decent reward for the cost of dealing with a small raid. Although goodwill from the Broken Empire might help get some guests on the strip, the Healer Mech Serum seems very interesting. The raid comes in, and unfortunately in a direction completely opposite from where the taser and the new defenses are set up. So off the mechanoids go to face them before they split up their attack group. This will be a good test run for the Artilleron as well, at the very least. The raid isn't anything special, and soon enough we have them on the run. What matters now is the quest rewards. Both users of the max serum are going to Jackie, as each can remove a permanent condition, and she has 2 of them that greatly reduce her mobility. So better that she be cured so she can be far more productive around the strip. Comeuppance for all the free toxic waste I've been sending their way finally comes as we get the first raid from the cannibal tribe. It isn't anything too special, and it lets us test the mechanoid and taser combo quite well. It also reveals a flaw in how I've been setting up generators, as one of them goes right for the heat vent. Clearly those need a little bit of a redesign. But I've barely time to do that, as not long after the first raid comes, the actual retaliation raid comes and they're all dead. Didn't even break a sweat. Guess that means they want me to keep sending them to waste. With all these raids, I think back to the question of capturing some of the attackers alive. It's time to build a prison. We've gotten a prisoner quest earlier and had to reassign a guest room to be a cell, and those adaptations just won't do anymore. These quests are quite profitable with good rewards. With this one I got some valuables I can sell alongside another power cell to help our electrical grid. So let's build an actual prison on the strip, starting with a side exit that will come in handy for other reasons like generator maintenance. The timing couldn't be better as we get another offer to hold 2 prisoners, but as it turns out, the timer ended before I was done building it, and I actually forgot to accept it. Still, the prison's in a decent place. Having it set up on an external area with its exit leading straight out will ensure that if a prison break does happen, they won't be running rampant in the strip itself and endangering our guests. Just don't tell our other guests at the tops that they're sharing a wall with potentially dangerous sorts. Also, during this time, another generator is set up, and a new design for the more distant structures is set. Heat exhaustion through gaps on the roof, and barbed wire all around except in the armored door at the entrance. We get another quest from the Broken Empire, this time to house a few of them for 22 days and deal with a big raid. Again, the goodwill is tempting, but 1200 units of plasteel and a persona weapon is far more enticing. I'm sure we'll handle this raid, and at the very least they're giving us 1 soldier to help deal with it. They arrive shortly after, and just in time to participate in Riley and Trado's marriage, and their soldier picked a fight with Mr. House. At least he survived the encounter. With the new generator finished, we're 1 step closer to being rid of our dependency on solar and wind power. It also means we can hit the next upgrade level on the Gestalt engine. While that's going, a pikeman is built to give us more long-ranged firepower now that the enemy raids are starting to outrange the standard Securitrons. The next few days are nothing but raids on top of raids, and we're waiting for the big one from the quest to arrive. We start off with quite a peculiar raid since one of the attackers is apparently Mr. House's daughter. At the minimum, it'd be ideal to keep her from dying, but the perfect scenario would be capturing her. In a sort of mixed blessing, she happens to be one of the attackers who flees once enough of them are down. So, no negative mood for House. I wonder if we'll run into her again. The raid after that is small and lets me do a more direct test of the pikeman's capabilities, sending it off on its own to kite the raiders into the kill zone, but they don't even last enough to do that properly. The third raid during this time is another relationship raid, this time someone related to our Empire guests. Although it doesn't affect us directly, her good mood during her stay would mean more goodwill at the end of the quest, so I'll do my best to spare him. The fight gets a little messy and bloody, but nothing too serious, and her brother makes it out alive, so the best scenario. After the raids, we get a desperate new colonist, Furco. Not much in the way of relevant skills, and she has an odd ideologian, but I'm sure she'll fit in just... Well, she broke and immediately went into an insulting spree, gunning for Mr. House. Talk about gratefulness with this one. To top it off, she picks a fight with one of the Empire guests. At the very least, this gives me an excuse to leave her resting in bed where she won't cause trouble. With Furco dealt with, the big raid finally arrives. By far the largest assault on the strip that we've had. They start by attacking the moisture pumps I was already going to deconstruct. Well, thank you, I guess. The temporary defenses show how flawed they are, as one of the sides is quickly overrun. Combined with the fact that the mechanoids barely had the time to arrive and set up, this could get tricky, and the quest soldier we have was too far away and is just making the way up there. We'll use that one to fight the sniper that's setting up inside our walls. Thankfully, no mechanoid is killed, but the soldier is downed. That, however, is not exactly the fault of the enemy raider. As it turns out, I had installed a tear gas grenade turret on the south entrance, thinking the radius that it showed was its maximum range when, in truth, it works off more like a mortar. And now even the kitchen is flooded with tear gas. Nice. Well, lesson learned. I'll have it set up elsewhere and keep a closer eye on it. With the raid dealt with, our Empire guests leave a few days later, and in comes the big reward for it. More plasteel than I know what to do with, and a new weapon. After some deliberation, I chose to give it to Gumpy. It'll suppress the pain, so he'll be very valuable in close range, but it also means I need to keep a closer eye on his health. We also get a small scare with the deep drill as an infestation comes through, but it's just a scare. No threat at all. What's important now is that the Tops is pretty much finished. It's mostly finishing touches, but the casino is open and we have better rooms available than Gomorrah, as it'll be the medium quality choice, with the Ultralux in the future as our finest hotel. During this time, I've also noticed that the canned meat in the vending machines wasn't as much of a solution as I thought. So we're moving on to a different, more rustic approach. Dried meat, thanks to the technology we get from the Roman Vanilla Expanded mod. The strip is actually flourishing. It isn't unusual to see multiple guest groups visiting at the same time, and we're almost at capacity even with 2 hotels. So we're really close to the finishing line here, having New Vegas built in all its glory. The Tops is spacious and welcoming, Gomorrah is the cheap option, and the Lucky 38 is becoming more and more of a robotics factory and also houses Throne in New Vegas. All that's left is the final casino, and very soon, the house will win.